We've been chatting with Claire, our guest speaker. She was born and raised in Tucson, Arizona, and she's the political director of Arizona List, an organization which is dedicated to electing pro-choice Democratic women to local and state office here in Arizona. She first got involved in politics in high school and is dedicated to fighting for reproductive rights and electing Democrats to local office, where she believes transformative change begins. Let's give Claire a warm Democrats of Greater Tucson welcome.
Thank you so much, Joe, and for the DGT board for inviting me here today, for having me here. I'm going to share my screen. I've got some slides for you all to get started, but I'm going to talk a little bit about Arizona List, the work we do, and the Arizonans for Abortion Access Initiative. So like Joe said, my name is Claire Knipe. I was born and raised in Tucson. I have been to DGT a number of times, including when you were still in person. So I am so excited to be talking to you all today from our Tucson office. So yeah, gonna go ahead and get started a little bit about Arizona List. Who are we? If any of you are familiar with the work of Emily's List, which is an organization that works to elect pro-choice Democratic women really on a national level, Arizona List was founded based off their mission because a group of women in Tucson in 2004 came together and saw the incredible work they were doing and said, if we want women to run for Congress and the US Senate, we need them running for local offices first. So we are the only mega PAC in Arizona that is solely dedicated to electing women. And we are one of, therefore, the largest financial resources for women as they're running for office. We work specifically with pro-choice Democratic women running for local and state office. We work on recruiting, training these candidates, doing whatever we can to help them win their elections, and then working with them as elected to be the best stewards for their message and representatives of their communities. So in our 20 years, we have worked with a wide number of candidates. We have elected over 200 women, winning almost 400 individual elections. Folks like our governor, Katie Hobbs, when she was first in the Arizona House, then the Arizona Senate, to our Secretary of State and now Governor. So working on building a strong bench of women. We are celebrating our 20th anniversary on March 2nd. I'll talk about that a little bit more at the end. But just in 2022, our last major election year, that is a typo, we elected 85 women. 32 had never been elected before. So while we work with a number of incumbents who run every single 2 years, we also work with a wide variety of candidates who are brand new. To give you an idea of the breadth of folks that we work with, here are our current elected officials. We have 128. This number is constantly changing. We just had an appointment last week that changed and shifted this number. But this just gives you an idea of the folks that we work with. Of these candidates, 50 of them are school board members, a number of whom I'm sure represent you in the Tucson area. I'm sure you can find some of your representatives in this list, but this just gives you an idea of really the wide breadth of candidates that we are working with across the state. So why do these local offices matter? Why does Arizona List specifically work on governor's race on down? So for one, as an organization that works on reproductive rights, focus on abortion access, these decisions are being made at a state level. In 2022, I'm sure many of you know the Dobbs decision that overturned Roe versus Wade specifically said that the decision about reproductive rights and abortion policy is given to the states. That means that our Arizona legislature are the ones who get to make those decisions. That is a local office. So when we think about these local offices, we're really talking about the issues, the impact, and the accessibility of these races. So the issues that these local offices are dealing with are the issues that most impact the average person. When we talk about the roads you drive on, what time you decide to leave your house to get groceries, it's going to depend upon what time that school down the street starts. I decide what time I come to office based off the fact that I drive past Tucson High, leaving and coming to work. I want to know when they start. Decisions made at the school board level. Knowing whether or not there's a speed bump or stop signs in my neighborhood is made at the municipal level. The issues that you are interacting with on a day-to-day basis are decided at the local level. The impact that we can have at the local level is so much greater. We have some incredible federal elected officials, and I'm so happy that we elected Mark Kelly as opposed to the alternative option we have. But the amount of work that it takes him to get one thing passed for a few people in Arizona is so much work. If I call my school board member, she's one of 5 people. She has to talk to 2 other people to get something done. The ability that we have to make an impact at the local level is greater by virtue of what these local offices look like. If I call my city council member and say, hey, we need some stop signs in my neighborhood, we could probably get that done in a few months. If I tried to address that problem going through my member of Congress, we're never going to get those stop signs. And lastly, the accessibility. I'm not sure how many of you have tried to contact Juan Ciscomani lately, but it's a lot of leaving messages, sending emails that you're not going to get a response to. He's not showing up at public places so you can chat with him. Your local elected officials are a part of your community. They are so much more accessible. I see our mayor, Regina Romero, at Target. I've run into her getting groceries before. I know that she is a real member of my community that I can talk to. I can call the phone numbers listed on the websites for my county elected officials and know that that message is actually getting to them. They may have staff, they may not have any staff. So knowing that these local offices are where these big decisions are actually being made, we have the opportunity to make really big change here. And these elected officials are accessible. And if they're not, we can change that. So this is really why Arizona List focuses on local offices and why you, as we go into this election year, should really be looking at all of those local offices on your ballot. So what do we do with the focus on this local work? We do recruitment work to make sure that we have good representation. So we work on recruiting women in strong Democratic districts where we have open seats, or we need to change up that representation, and looking in Republican districts where we know that we can win against a Republican incumbent if we just run someone. So a lot of these local and state races are nonpartisan. Our city council, for a majority of places, Tucson is actually an exception, is a nonpartisan race, which means that if you want to go run to be mayor of Scottsdale, there is not a D, an I, or an R next to your name, making these races a lot more winnable for Democrats in red areas. So with that being said, if you are thinking about running for office, if you are running for office and are a pro-choice Democratic woman, please contact me. If you know someone who should be running for office that fits that description, please have them reach out to me. I will put my contact information at the end, but we work specifically with folks who say, I want to run for office, but have no idea what offices exist on my ballot. People who don't have the time necessarily to know every single office that exists that may be open, that they may be applicable for, getting these folks into trainings. People have decided what they're running for, but making sure that they're set up and prepared, please contact me. So leading me into our trainings. One of our biggest supports that we offer for candidates is trainings. So most of these are open to the public. This includes staff and volunteers. So even if you never want to run for office, but you are the most engaged door knocker who knocks on every candidate's doors, we offer trainings about how you can be more effective. If you're interested in being staff, these trainings are helpful with that. Most of these trainings are designed based on needs. So our candidates come to us and say, hey, I am struggling with fundraising, or hey, things are being really pushed into a digital front. How do we campaign online? How does that change things? And then what we notice. So as we work with candidates, are we noticing particular issues are coming up frequently? Are there things that we are like, as a whole in Arizona, this problem is continually coming up? So we work on trying to address these needs throughout our candidates statewide, that we can address some of these problems that they're dealing with. We work with local and national groups. So when we talk about how do you work with unions, we have one of our local union leaders come and talk about that. When we talk about messaging on reproductive rights, we work with some other organizations who work on reproductive rights and have a comms specific lens. So we work with others to make sure that candidates are getting the best that they absolutely can and are getting really good resources and are able to go and train. One of the barriers for a lot of candidates, especially on a local level, is access to resources. Our legislative candidates tend to have support through the party. People know who they are. They've got our legislative districts that are organized. You have PCs and volunteers. If you are running for school board in Bisbee, you may have none of those things. Trainings may be really expensive. So for us, offering trainings that are free, open to folks who are still considering running, opens up who is interested in running, opens up our bench of candidates for future years. So we are in the middle of our last big candidate training series for the 2024 cycle, but it is not too late to sign up. We are not in too deep that you cannot catch up. So if you are interested in signing up for a candidate-specific training that is entirely virtual on Zoom, that walks through what do you need to know to run for office, please email me. I can get you all set up, but know that this is a resource for candidates. If you run into someone who is running for office, a woman who is getting ready to go but needs lots of support, please direct them to Arizona List. So I want to talk to you all a little bit about what the 2024 political landscape looks like. You all, as I'm here, are aware that we are in an election year and that it's quite a big one. But I want to give you an idea of really how much is on the ballot and how important this election is. So on the federal level, we have the presidency, we have a US Senate race and 9 congressional seats that are up. Here in Tucson, we've also got an incredibly competitive congressional seat. In the Arizona legislature, all 90 seats are up for election, including 3 of the 5 Corporation Commission seats. And Ana Tovar, the only Democrat on that commission, has announced that she is not running for re-election. So we've got a tough fight for 3 statewide, but down ballot races with new candidates. In 2024, every single county elected office is up for election. So Board of Supervisors in all 15 counties and all of those county executives like our assessor, attorney, recorder, sheriff, all of those offices are up. A majority of our school boards are 5-person boards. So like at QSD, there are 5 members. We have a few community college boards and other school boards with 7 or 9 members. But in all of those 5-person boards, 3 of those seats are up, which means that we have the opportunity to either win or lose every single school board in Arizona. Half of our justice of the peace and constable races are up, and a lot of initiative and referendums, including the Arizona for Abortion Access Initiative that I'll get to in a second. Arizona List is working with 135 women this cycle. And I'm going to let you know that that number is growing. There are school board candidates who are just deciding to run because their signatures are due in July. They've got some time, especially smaller school boards. We are going to have a very, very busy ballot. We have lots of crucial races up. You see on my slide, we have the ability to win or lose all of our school board races, Corporation Commission, all of our Board of Supervisors. Presidential years are really big years here in Arizona for these offices. So please, take note of those local candidates in your area. Pay attention to those races. If you need to know who they are looking for more candidates, please check in with Arizona List and I would be happy to connect you. So I want to talk a little bit about the Arizona for Abortion Access Initiative, the AAA initiative as we are calling it. This is a citizen-initiated ballot measure that would amend the state constitution to include access to abortion care for Arizonans. So we, as an organization, as Arizona List, have been working with a number of groups to put together this initiative. So as we talked about a little bit earlier, the 2022 Dobbs decision that overturned Roe versus Wade sent the ability to make decisions about abortion care and reproductive rights to the states. That meant initially in Arizona, there was a lot of confusion and questions. And for about the first month after that decision, there was no abortion care in Arizona due to legal concerns. We are still fighting legal battles about what is the most relevant law, whether or not that is a 15-week ban passed in 2021 or an 1864 territorial law that bans all abortion, making it a felony for any physician who assists. So we currently have access up to 15 weeks in Arizona, but that may change quickly. So these groups have come together in saying that this is crucial. Arizona needs to have abortion access. We know that our legislature is not the most friendly. We would love to flip it in November. That is our goal. That is what we are going to do. But in the case that we do not, we are working on this initiative. This initiative will again change the Arizona state constitution. Because of that, we need a lot of signatures to get on the ballot because we are amending the state constitution. This also means that the Arizona legislature cannot touch this. It will not be able to be touched by a legislative body or a different governor. This will be the law in Arizona. So we need almost 400,000 valid signatures by July of 2024. And that is where you all come in. We have been working hard to collect these signatures. You all in Southern Arizona have been doing the work. So here is an update that we pulled from our folks about where we are at in Southern Arizona. So you all have collected 24,000 signatures just by volunteers here in Southern Arizona. We have brought back in about 2,000 petition sheets, but we've signed out 6,000. I really want to emphasize that for you all. So while Southern Arizona is showing up, we are pulling our weight. We are pulling more than our weight in the signature collection. We are only at 33% of that turn-in rate. So 24,000 is a small drop in the bucket compared to that 400,000 we need to turn in. So if you have checked out petitions and are holding on to them, turn them in. If you are holding on to it because you've got a Yuma sheet with 4 petitions on it, bring it back. We can sign out some more. But by giving us a really accurate count, turning in those petitions, letting us know exactly how many we have, it gives us an idea of really where we're at. We've got about 4,000 petition sheets floating out there. We cannot assume that those have a single valid petition signature on them until we see them. So please, if you have those, turn them in. If you have not yet circulated, if you are interested, we are offering trainings every Tuesday at 7 p.m. on Zoom to talk about how do we talk about abortion. This is a bit of a controversial issue. Not everyone feels comfortable talking to people about abortion and access to abortion care here in Arizona. So we give you all of those tools, give you all of those guidelines about how do you actually collect these signatures. There are a lot of specifics. And give you every tool you need. So again, if you have those petitions, turn them in, but we do still need volunteer circulators, and we've got a number of ways for you to circulate. I'm sure many of you have already signed. You've probably been asked to sign more than a few times. Here in Southern Arizona, we are reaching an oversaturation problem where every person that we could get at a Trader Joe's parking lot or at the public library or at Bookman's, where I was asked last week, all of those folks have signed. But what we need is we need you to talk to the people in your life that you think might have signed, but you don't actually know. Almost all of my friends had been approached by someone that said, hey, are you interested in signing their petition? But they didn't actually know what it was about, and they didn't trust it, so they didn't sign. They waited until I asked them. You are going to be the best messenger for this initiative to collect these petitions to the people that you know personally that might be a little wary of someone standing on a street corner approaching them. Maybe they're busy and just never stop for those things. We have the ability for you to canvass your own neighborhood. If any of you have ever used the distributed list, it will pull those friendly folks wherever you are. So you can go to your own neighborhood, your best friend's neighborhood, but we have got some tools to help you. You can email me or reach out on our website, but we have got a number of tools for you. We have a lot of our candidates are collecting petitions to get on the ballot. So grab some petition signatures for your favorite county candidate here in Pima or your legislative district and help us get over the hump and getting all of these petitions in. My last thing that I wanted to talk to you all about today is the Arizona List annual event. So we are celebrating 20 years of our work, and we have the sister of the Vice President, Maya Harris, Senior Policy Advisor, and Emily's List board member, who will be in Tucson. She will be here in person at the Fox on Saturday, March 2nd, to talk about national work, the importance of Arizona, and the importance of reproductive rights. We are honoring 20 women who have changed what politics look like in Arizona, including a number of folks here from Southern Arizona. Here are some of those folks that we will be honoring. We would love to have you all there. You can buy tickets on our website. If that cost is a barrier for you, please reach out to me. We do have some scholarships available, but we would love to see you all there. We will be at the Fox Theater, so a new location. And again, Maya Harris will be here in Tucson. It will be exciting, and we'll be honoring lots of great women. So that is the end of my presentation. I want to leave time for questions. I will leave this slide up for just a minute with my contact information. If anyone wants to chat with me about running for office, the Abortion Access Initiative, or our annual event, I am here to do so. So I will open it up to questions at this point.
I did a quick skim of all the folks that are going to be recognized and honored, and what a great group of women. Really, I can't wait to go.
Yes, it will be very exciting. I can tell you that I have been working on some bios and information on all these folks. These are some absolute groundbreakers here in Arizona. A lot of these women were the first to be elected in a position. So it's really exciting to have them all in one place and to get to hear about all the great work that they've done.
Well, and I had a chance to meet Janet Napolitano back probably about 20 years ago. I can't wait to tell her a story of that meeting. So I think it's fantastic. Let's see, Mike, you had your hand up. Claudia Miller.
Yeah, I got a couple questions in the chat for Claire. First of all, is one of our board members, Barathon. He asks, he thinks he signed the petition, but he doesn't remember if he did that. Is there any way that he can check, and is there anything he can do to ensure his signature is on the form?
So we do not have a way for folks to check if they have signed, but we are asking that if you think you've signed, Barathon, I know you, I think if you think you've signed, you probably have, for folks to not sign again. So one kind of particular thing is the way that our signatures are validated is that they take a sample. So they choose a random set of petitions from the middle and they check that validity rate and then assign it to everything that we turned in. So we are working on making sure that our validity rate is as high as possible. So if folks think they've signed, we're asking you to not sign again.
And Claudia Miller asks, she reached out to someone in LD18 to find out where petitions would be available in Scottsdale for her family up there. Is there like a central place we can go to find out how to get a hold of petitions and where to sign?
Yes. I believe that there is a Mobilize with petition signing events statewide that is available on the Abortion Access website. So our website is super simple. It's Arizona4abortionaccess.org, and .com also takes you there. We have an office up in Phoenix that's listed on our website. I think it's 514 West of McDowell, if I'm correct off the top of my head, that folks can pick up petitions, just sign. And we have some pretty regular office hours as well as some individual hubs if someone is like, I am in Scottsdale and cannot get to downtown Phoenix. I believe we've got some folks actually in Scottsdale that have opened up their homes or doing at events at like coffee shops and things like that.
I wanted to ask two questions, but let me ask the first one that comes to my mind. I'm out of LD21, and LD21 has got a very significant rural population, and we are having difficulties in getting to them. Is there anything that Arizona List is doing to approach rural folks?
So I think with our rural populations, we have to be strategic and we have to think about all of the different ways that we can be talking to folks. So are you talking specifically with the initiative or in terms of just like door knocking and voter outreach?
No, specifically about the initiative.
Okay.
I think
So
it's much tougher in the rural areas, isn't it?
Yeah, so specifically with the initiative, I know I have spent some time in Cochise County. We had some of our staff in Cochise County earlier just last month. So we are working on in some of these places where it is not always possible to knock on doors. If you live almost a mile from your closest neighbor on a dirt road, it's pretty hard for us to knock on that door. What can we do? What community members do we know in these areas who could invite folks over? Can we do an event where we bring people together in person? Can we do an event at a park? I think it was Sierra Vista had a huge youth engagement event this weekend where they did a signature event, and then they had a number of their candidates and elected officials come together and say, we want to hear from you. We are not as often as we should be maybe in this community. What should we be doing? How can we be out here more often? But sometimes when you're in an area where we can't always knock on those doors, there isn't that one big Safeway that everyone goes to, that everyone walks by. Where are those places that we can find folks? Are there community events that we can be tabling at, that we can show at? Are there community members that can be good stewards for us that we need to talk to about what do they need from us to be willing to invite their neighbors over, to sign this petition, to host an event, do things like that. But really thinking strategically about standard door knocking is not always the approach in some of these areas. How do we work around it?
Okay, Bill Shipp, you have a question.
My name is Bill Shipp, and I'm in Marana. I'm a new resident to Arizona and to Pima County, of course. I'm from Texas, so I'm a refugee from Texas. But anyway, the the Arizona politics and Arizona policies, procedures, things like that are still, a great mystery to me, as I'm sure they are to many people. But you did mention, Claire, that you had about 24,000, I believe the number was, signatures in Southern Arizona. Any idea what the numbers are in the Phoenix area, which is obviously the population center of the state?
So I do not have exact numbers. Kathy, I don't know if you have those. She is on. We have collected about 250,000 statewide, but that also includes our paid signature collection. So the number I gave you was just our volunteers in Southern Arizona.
Okay. So you got about 250,000 total, you think, right now?
Yes.
So it's an achievable goal then.
Absolutely. And we are verifying these as we go. So something that I will tell you all is that your signature collection as volunteers are a good amount more valid than our paid circulators, which is why we are asking you all to circulate. You as volunteers ask really good and important questions. You take the time to make sure that someone can sign, is actually a valid circulator, they fill things out properly, which is why we are relying so much on you all as volunteers, because you tend to be better collectors. So it's why we are leaning on so heavily those volunteers, that those signatures are more valid, but that 250,000 is verified.
Yay.
And I saw that Bridget had a question. You put your hand down, but I want to see, Bridget, do you still have a question?
I don't, because the gentleman prior to me asked the same question, because I sit on the board of Arizona List and I have some idea of the numbers. 24,000 seemed a little small, because I didn't want people to be totally depressed about that, because I knew the number statewide was bigger. So thank you to the gentleman prior to me for asking that important question.
And Bill, welcome to Arizona. We're glad you're here.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here. Even though I wish
Okay.
I could vote in a couple of elections back in Texas as well.
Well, here we have Larry Bodine has a question. Larry?
Claire, could you talk a little bit more about the Arizona Corporation Commission race? You had mentioned that Anna.
Oh, Larry, you muted yourself halfway through there.
So Anna Tovar is not going to be running, which is a huge loss. And the Corporation Commission is very anti-solar and has asked the staff to come up with a way to get rid of all of the alternative energy solutions. What can we do to elect Democrats to the Corporation Commission?
Yeah, and thank you for that question, Larry. I think that's a really important one. So for those who don't know, the Arizona Corporation Commission is our fourth branch of government here in Arizona. I think it's a good way to think about it, but they are an elected body that is there to kind of be a check on our corporations. Their main job is to prevent monopolies and the impact of monopolies here in Arizona. So their biggest role that folks kind of know them for and talk about is the work that they do with our energy standards and all of our energy and utility companies. So the Corporation Commission is the place that determines what our utility rates are, because I don't know about you, but I do not have an option of choosing Southwest Gas or Tucson Electric Power. That is who I go with. And so the Corporation Commission decides what rates they are allowed to charge us. Part of that includes setting an energy standard, clean energy standard, which is saying that, hey, Southwest Gas, we love that you provide gas services to almost all of Arizona. X amount of that gas production has to come from a clean or renewable source. Right now, those standards are set to expire next year. This current Corporation Commission that is very anti-climate change, they think it doesn't exist. They do not think that we should have caps on non-renewable sources, have asked their staff into what they can do to not have to follow those standards for next year. I would like to note that all of the policies have been set. It is a useless endeavor to try to change what their plans look like in terms of energy sources for a year from now. Really, what is crucial here is that all of those standards are set to end in a year. which means that if we do not have advocates who care about our climate and who care about clean energy sources, we will go back to using largely oil and gas as our energy sources with no standards for renewable sources. So right now, like I said, we have one Democrat on that board, Anna Tovar. She has announced that she is not running again. Arizona List is working with Elenia Aguilar, who is on the Central Arizona Water Conservation District Project Board. It is a mouthful, but she is a water expert that works on getting water access to border communities and sits on this board. So we have a candidate that we are working with. I know that there are other folks running, and we are working towards having a slate of 3 strong Democratic candidates. But really, this office is crucial because of the work that they do in controlling these monopolies, largely in setting clean and renewable energy standards. In Arizona, how do we win those seats? Those are not easy seats to win. We win in those local races by talking about local offices. So 2018 was the first year that we flipped some major Democratic statewide races here in Arizona. And research that was done after 2018, after 2020 and 2022, really looking at why did we win some statewide races and lose others? Why were we successful in the places we were? All of that data has pointed to find that we won in 2018, we won statewide races, not in our super blue districts, not because of our purple districts, but because of red rural parts of Arizona that overperformed. So the work that Arizona List does is we work on having candidates in LD1 and LD19 and LD14 in places where the numbers tell us that it is near impossible for a Democrat to actually win and be the state representative for that district. But when we have candidates who knock on doors and talk about voting for down ballot races, they show up for everyone on the ballot. When we go and knock on doors in Sierra Vista for a school board candidate, they are not skipping every other race before they get to school board and vote on those candidates. The reverse is not always true. So when we go out to these rural communities and we say, hey, there are Democrats on your ballot, there are Democrats in your community, even if you don't think so, we are helping everyone else. So if you have an opportunity and feel like you live in the bluest neighborhood in the state, as I know some of us in Tucson do, feel like we do, think about going and knocking on doors for an out-county candidate, for someone in a really red district, a school board candidate, a constable candidate, a city council, a legislative candidate. I can tell you that we have Democrats in Marana, Fountain Hills, Florence, Arizona, Scottsdale, places that you do not think of as being blue, because we show up. And that is where we have made up the difference for these statewide candidates. That is how we will win some seats on the Corporation Commission. Arizona will stay blue only if we do this work. So please take some time out. Yes, I'm seeing lots of information about our corporation candidates. They all have incredible websites and bios. We have a bio of Elenia on our website. I know Josh has spoken to you all, but Corporation Commission is a huge race. Please pay attention to it and be watching CorpCom.
Okay, Bridget, you have your hand up.
As I mentioned, I'm on the board of directors of Arizona List, and I am so proud to be there. And I'm just going to ask for your financial support. The kind of work that Arizona List has done for the past 20 years in transforming the state of Arizona is absolutely incredible. Think about what we looked like 20 years ago. Think about where we are right now. We're one seat away from changing the legislature blue. Claire mentioned that we're having an extraordinary event on Saturday, March the 2nd. It will be at the Fox Theater. She mentioned that Maya Harris will be speaking. I don't know that you mentioned, Claire, that there will be an extraordinarily wonderful online silent auction that will run for a week prior to the event. It'll be starting on the 24th of February with some amazing prizes. So please help us out financially. It's a very small staff. we need some help here. We will appreciate anything you can do by going to our website. And if you click on the face of Maya Harris on the website, it will take you to buy tickets.
And I want to just emphasize something that Bridget said, and that I've seen in the chat, and that we are a membership-based organization. So the only way that we get to do any of our work is by having members, like I know many of you are. This also means that we have a different capacity when we give to candidates because we are membership-based. It allows us sometimes to do a little bit different work. I want you to think about the wide breadth of work that we do throughout the state. You as an individual do not always have the time to research every school board candidate in the state, but know that we are working with folks throughout all 15 counties, that we, by donating to Arizona List, you are helping to elect over 100 folks this election cycle. So we are working 135 candidates so far. We've got more training cycles going. Lots of candidates up and down the ballot. I have put in specifically the link for our annual event, but our website is arizonalist.org. You can donate, see all of our events, all of our trainings are there. Lots more Arizona List information, again, arizonalist.org.
I don't know what I said. This is really my introduction to Arizona List, an organization I was not aware of before today. So I'm really glad that I tuned in today. But I am certainly long familiar with Emily's List and the good work that they do nationally and in states as well. And I can see where Arizona List, supplements that in many ways, especially going down to the lower offices. You mentioned the school board in Bisbee. I mean, Emily's List seldom gets down that low. But my question really was, there is certainly some overlap there. Do you coordinate with Emily's List at all?
Absolutely, we do. So that overlap is very much informed by us. I can tell you when they said, we are looking at making our 2024 endorsement decisions, how does this list look? So you'll notice that this year they are really legislatively focused. They have not made any endorsements. They may make a few municipal mayoral endorsements, but they are really focused on the legislature, especially here in Arizona. So we were very fortunate to actually have Emily's List staff here this weekend. We did an in-person training up in Phoenix on finance. So we overlap a lot of work where sometimes we say, you know what, they may not necessarily endorse or work with these candidates, but we're going to bring in some of their resources and staff for trainings so that these school board candidates are still receiving that support. But we work closely with Emily's List. We are a partner of theirs.
Claire, I was wondering if you could tell it, if you know about this, I don't know if you do, but they're running a bill now in the Arizona legislature called the Women's Bill of Rights, rather misleadingly. I don't know if you know anything about this this model legislation that's sweeping the nation, but it's pretty insidious. And I was wondering if you're able to talk about it at all.
I do not, but what I can talk about and would love to is what to pay attention to at the Arizona legislature and kind of some of these changing tactics, because I am very attuned to that in the reproductive rights space. So I didn't talk to you all much about legislation of the Arizona legislature, but as I'm sure many of you know, the Democrats are sitting with a 1-seat minority in both chambers. So we've got 14 of those 30 elected bodies in the Senate and 29 of the 60 in the House. Republicans, with their 1-seat advantage, have utilized that singular seat. The most extreme members have withheld their votes on things like the budget until they have gotten some really extreme legislation. This is why in the last about 4 years, we have seen more and more extreme conservative legislation coming out of Arizona. Actually, the 15-week ban that Arizona List has is a copycat bill of the bill that overturned Roe versus Wade. It was written by a right-wing think tank, sent to legislators in all 50 states, and it was passed in a number of them, including Arizona. So a lot of times when you see, like Mike said, this women's rights bill, these bills that are attacking trans students in sports or bathrooms or book bans, a lot of these bills are not written by Arizonans or legislators. They're written by lobbyists. They're written by right-wing think tanks, and then they're sent to folks who introduce them in our legislators. So we have seen in the realm of reproductive rights a change in tactics. So rather than introducing just straight up abortion bans, bills that we know on the surface are bad, they're starting to be more nefarious. So last session, what we saw were personhood bills. What these bills did is they found a really sneaky way to establish a fetus as a person in Arizona statute. So we saw this as if you are a pregnant person, you can drive in the carpool lane. What that does, it seems really innocuous. It seems like, oh, sure, that's not a big deal. That changes Arizona statute to make a fetus a person. The consequences that that could have in our legal system for someone who has a miscarriage, for someone who needs medical care, when you are changing that statute, it changes every single Arizona statute that says a person. So when we see bills that say someone should be able to apply for child support and get that payment while they're still pregnant, what that does is that's establishing personhood for a fetus. So we see these bills that seem kind of innocuous. They don't seem to be a big deal, really attacking reproductive rights in a sneaky way. So pay attention for these bills that seem really weird. Is this solving a problem? Is this actually addressing something? Sometimes those bills that seem to be addressing problems that do not exist are a workaround for something more nefarious. So pay attention to those Democratic representatives. Arizona List does a Facebook Live every Friday with one of our legislators to talk about what happened, what bills are moving forward, what should we be paying attention to. Last week we had Annalise Ortiz, so we talked a lot about housing bills, how those are moving forward. We talked a lot about justice bills and criminalization issues. There is a lot happening at our state legislature. I believe almost 800 bills were introduced this year. It is hard to keep track of all of them, but finding those folks, organizations, and people that you trust to keep track of that information for you and to say, hey, this is a really bad bill, please be talking against it, is your best way to kind of keep track of the Arizona legislature. I hope that answered that question because I don't know about that one specific bill. There are so many bad ones this year.
Yeah.
Andrea Kennedy has a question.
I didn't have a question, but I looked up real quick. I think this is the bill that was being talked about. And you're right about it's going to make the fetus into a person. And I noticed on there, as so many times with these bills, that one of the things it says is that it talks at length about born alive is the phrase they use. And it says that if the infant, it becomes an infant, is born alive, you have to keep it warm and resuscitate and suction. And you know, this is the thing about this whole issue is doctors and nurses already do that. As having gone through a similar experience, they already take care of any child that's born alive. And they wrap it up and put it in isolate. You know, they already do this, but I mean, it's not apropos to, you know, still a bad bill, but it just strikes me the ignorance of these people who write this seems to just have no end. And that's what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Absolutely. These bills are not written by doctors or physicians or nurses or people who are in these emergency rooms, in these operating rooms, who know what is happening. They are, again, written as political grandstanding. We saw a bill almost identical to that, that language move through last session. And we had doctors who said, we have standards and practices that this already falls into. You are creating a traumatizing situation for someone who is already going through a lot. That's what this is doing. This is making someone's experience much worse, and we don't need to be doing that.
Okay, Steve Linder has a question.
Hey, with all of the bad bills that have come through, thank God we have the governor, because one of the things that happened last session is, I believe she vetoed 143 bills. I think it's going to be 3 times that if they get through the legislature. But what's happening right now is, and I lobby up at the legislature with the Arizona Education Association, so I've been there 3 times already. What's happening right now is the legislature is getting smarter, the Republicans, because they're setting up a lot of initiatives which bypass the governor and go directly onto the ballot.
Yes.
And part of that, that's a twofold situation. Number one, she can't veto it. Number two, when we do have the initiative about abortion, there's going to be about 50 or 60 other things. And what happens with that is it just makes it very confusing. And then people tend to vote no. And some good stuff may not be passed. So my question is, what is your organization doing about the fact that this initiative process may really be something we need to keep our eyes on?
Absolutely. And I think that's a good question, a good thing to be aware of. So for those of you that don't follow the state legislature as closely as Steve and I may, what he's talking about is bills that are listed as an SCR or an HCR. So instead of being an SB or an HB, what that means, so it's a Senate concurrent reading, it means that rather than being sent to the governor's office if it passes both chambers, that bill goes immediately to the ballot. There are a number of bills that Republicans are doing this year that way because they learned that the governor vetoed every single bad bill of theirs last year, believe it or not. So rather than being willing to work with the governor, they've said, okay, we'll go around you. So we are a number of these bills. We are working on that good old fashioned legislative process and seeing how many, if any, we can get killed before they make it to the ballot. Working on those few moderate Republicans that can be willing to see some common sense on some of these issues. So I know that particularly on the Students' Bill of Rights bills, folks in the Senate have been working on Ken Bennett to see if he will potentially vote no on that. We really only need one no vote in either chamber because the Republicans have a single seat majority and they need 31 votes, not 30. We need one Republican in either chamber to vote no on one of these bills, and it won't make it to the ballot. So that is our first strategy. Secondly, is we are going to be doing a lot of voter outreach with the initiative to talk about what is the AAA initiative. Once we have our proposition numbers, we will be launching a full-scale campaign. You will have lit at all of your canvases to talk about the AAA initiative. We will be talking to folks about what is this initiative. And I imagine, as we have traditionally in past years, be working with our county parties, local LDs to come up with that kind of cheat sheet to say, hey, here are how we are recommending that you vote on these initiatives. Because if we are going to have 12 different propositions, initiatives, or referendums on that ballot, it gets really hard for voters. And so having some information about what does this do in one sentence, do we recommend a yes or a no vote? Having that really basic information for voters is going to be crucial come November.
You know, Claire, what a wonderful meeting, and thanks so much for such a wonderful presentation with lots of information, lots of calls to action. So I'd like to close on a quote today. Andrea Kennedy reminded us that it's Abraham Lincoln's birthday. And there's a quote that we've heard before, but I think it might be as appropriate as ever. Government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth. We're talking serious times, people, and we got lots of work to do.